Yes, in our last class, we looked at relationship among words in sentence construction, and we established a paradigmatic and syntagmatic relationship that exists among words. And I believe that by now, you are aware that when you are constructing any structure in language, you make use of different parts of speech, especially open class words and closed class words. And there are rules that guide the choice you make in their composition. But today we need to move forward because we need to look at phrasal analysis. We have looked at sentence earlier and also clausal analysis. And we just browse through phrase analysis because it is what you have done in the second semester in your 100 level. And also you have the lecture video on YouTube where you can easily go to study. But nevertheless, we still use it as a kind of refreshing moment. It's only that we may not go so deep and detail because of time. So we are looking at a phrase. From inception, we explain the meaning of the phrase. That a phrase is a grammatical unit that is used as a tool in syntactic analysis. It's a grammatical unit used as a tool in syntactic analysis. And by that, we understand that when we are looking at the grammatical rank scale, we mentioned that we have a morpheme, word, phrase, clause, and sentence. That sentence occupies the highest position. So phrase is one of those units. I also say that it's one of the constituents into which a clause or sentence can be divided. And we look at some examples, then we have this sentence. Each of the students in the class has provided an answer to the probing question. And in the class, then we look at how many phrases could be derived from that sentence. There we realize that we have each of the students as one, of the students another phrase, the student another phrase, the student in the class another phrase, in the class another phrase, the class is another phrase, has provided another phrase, an answer another phrase. So the probing question, another phrase, then last phrase there is the probing question. So you realize that a sentence could be divided into different number of phrases. And each of the phrases stands as a unit of meaning on its own. So we say a phrase is made up of a group of words which has internal syntactic structure and semantic cohesion. So what we simply mean here is that a phrase must have internal syntactic structure. That has to do with the arrangement of elements that made up the phrase. They are arranged according to syntactic rules that guide structure of phrases. Another thing is that we discovered that each of them has semantic cohesion. The way they are arranged, they must make meaning. Though the meaning may not be completed, but it must make meaning. Like we said that a phrase is a unit of meaning which contains a head and modifiers in the structure. It has meaning, but the meaning is not complete. It contains a head and a modifier in its structure. And a phrase has head word as mentioned earlier, and modifier, but the modifiers are divided into two. We have pre-modifier, which comes before the head word, and post-modifier, which comes after the head word. So in the structure of a phrase, we have pre-modifier plus head word plus post-modifier. For example here, the student in the class, there is pre-modifier, student the head word in the class post-modifier. And we mentioned that it's not compulsory that all the elements must occur in the structure of a phrase. We may have some that contain pre-modifier and head word. For example, the students. There is pre-modifier, while students is the head word, as provided, as its pre-modifier, why provided is the head word. And some may contain head and a post modifier. For example, each of the students. In that phrase, each is the head, why of the student is a post modifier. Also of the student. In of the student, we have the head word of, why the students stand as post modifier. In the class. In the class also is another example. In is the head word, why the class is the post modifier in that example. So you can say that under the features of phrase, you can say that a phrase is a unit of grammar. And as a unit of grammar, it's also a unit of meaning. But the issue is that it does not contain a complete meaning. Like we gave an example, like a boy. A boy has meaning. It's talking about only one male human. But we can't claim that it does not have meaning, like we have sorted that out already. Yeah, we said that it contains head word and modifier in the structure. Head word is the only compulsory element in the structure of a phrase, while the modifiers are optional elements. So a phrase is named after its head word. If the head word of a phrase is a noun, it's called a noun phrase. If the head is an adjective, it becomes adjectival phrase. If the head is a verb, it becomes a verb phrase. So the head word is the word class that plays the most important role in the phrase. I will mention there are 5 major types of phrase in English. You have a noun phrase, verb phrase, adverbial phrase, adjectival phrase, and the prepositional phrase. Those are the 5. But briefly, we go through them. We mention them: noun phrase, 5 major types, verb phrase, adjectival phrase, adverbial phrase, and prepositional phrase. Let's briefly look at a noun phrase. A noun phrase is a phrase that performs the functions of a noun in a sentence. That is, any function that a noun can perform, the same thing is what a noun phrase performs. And we say it's made up of a noun and one or more modifiers. There must be a noun that will stand as its head. Why? Modifiers must be there. Like I said, the noun is the head in the noun phrase, and we have pre-modifier, head word, and post modifier in its structure. For example, a beautiful tall lady at the entrance. It's a noun phrase. A beautiful tall lady at the entrance. If you look at that phrase, you know that a particular word carries the prominence. That is the word that will function as the head. Here we are talking about lady. All the elements that come before the lady, they are pre-modifier. A indicates that we are talking about only one lady. We are not being specific. Beautiful is talking about the attributes of that lady. It's a lady with beauty. And tall is talking about the heights of the lady. So a beautiful tall, all of them serve as the pre-modifier, while lady is head word. At the entrance is another phrase that is telling us about the location of the lady. At the entrance is a post modifier. And what function as a post modifier there is another phrase entirely. So looking at another example, the technician who fixed the tap. There is a pre-modifier. Technician is the noun head that gives that noun the name noun phrase. Who fixed the tap is a post modifier. If you look at it critically, you realize that this is a clause, and that clause functions as a post modifier in a noun phrase. So the example we have a pre-modifier, head word, and a post modifier. So, like we said, pre-modifier. Pre-modifier comes before the head word in every phrase. It comes before the head word in every phrase. And the following grammatical element can function as a pre-modifier. If you are looking for pre-modifier in a noun phrase, these elements can perform the function of a pre-modifier. We have determiners such as a, and, the, any, every, to, third, and several of them. All the determiners can function as pre-modifier. Example, a boy. A is a pre-modifier, while boy is the head word. An artist, and pre-modifier, artist, the head word. So people. So is a pre-modifier, who is a determiner, while people is the noun head of the phrase. So next element is an adjective. Like the example we had earlier, an adjective can function as a pre-modifier by showing the attributes of the noun head. For example, we have a big, short, yellow, handsome, fine, brilliant, and the rest. Here we have a big box. Big here is an adjective expressing the size of the box. A round table. Round there is an adjective indicating the shape of the table. A handsome boy. Handsome is an adjective indicating the nature, the attributes of the boy. The next element is called genitives. Genitives are possessive nouns. These possessive nouns can function as a pre-modifier to pre-modify another noun, meaning that possessive noun can pre-modify another noun. For example, Samson's car. You see the presence of the apostrophe S indicates possession. That the car we are talking about belongs to who? Samson. Samson is a genitive that pre-modifies the noun car. Men's wear. Where is the head word? Why men's is genitive, indicating the ownership of the wear we're talking about. Ladies' bag, the same thing. And besides genitives, we can have a noun pre-modifying another noun. It can even be in the sequence. So in that place, you have a sample like tablecloth, tablecloth. Table is a noun pre-modifying the another noun, cloth. Maternity home. Maternity is a noun pre-modifying another noun, home. Titus Boulevard. Titus is a noun pre-modifying another noun. Also, likewise, the combination of your name, Larry Titus. Larry is a noun modifying another noun, Titus. And because the last noun there will serve as the head word, that's the reason when you are being addressed, you'll be addressed as either Miss or Mr. or Mrs., your surname, because your surname is the head word, while every other word that comes before your surname, they are pre-modifiers. They are pre-modifiers. So it distinguishes you from other people that share the same surname. So post modifier on its own comes after the head word in every phrase. It comes after the head word in every phrase. And we have the following grammatical items that can function as a post modifier. We have a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase is a phrase on its own, but being a phrase can be, we call it phrase like this embedded phrase. When a phrase occurs within another phrase called embedded phrase, and also when we have a clause within a phrase, that clause is also called embedded clause. So we have a personal phrase: by the road, in the class, at home, from my compound, and the rest. So all these propositional phrases can function as a post modifier. So they can function as a post modifier. For example, the house by the road. The house by the road. By the road is a prepositional phrase that post modifies the noun head house. Which house are we talking about? the one by the road. A girl from my compound. Here we have a pre-modifier, girl, the head word. From my compound is a post modifier, supplying additional information on the girl, which is the head word. Apart from frictional phrase, we also have an adjective. An adjective can post modify a noun in a noun phrase. Example, we have attorney general, Lord spiritual. Here, attorney is the head word, while general is an adjective that post modify. We have Lord spiritual. Lord is a noun, which is the head word, while spiritual is an adjective. And there are some other expressions in that manner. Apart from that, we have a relative clause that can function as a post modifier. Like I mentioned earlier, when you have a clause with the subsumed within a phrase, it is called embedded clause. So in our example here, the land which was taken. Looking at it, land is a major thing we are talking about, major concept. Which was taken is a post modifier that modify the particular land we refer to. So which was taken is a relative clause that post modifies the noun land. The lady who won the contest. The lady who won the contest. Here, who won the contest is a post modifier to the noun head lady that shows our reference. Aside from relative clause, we also have a noun clause. A noun clause can also function as a post modifier in a noun phrase. We have an example here. The fact that you confronted your challenges. The fact that you confronted your challenges. The major item we are talking about is fact, which is the head word. Which facts that you confronted your challenges is a clause. It's a noun clause. And that clause post modifies the noun head. Another example, the excuse you gave. You gave is a clause, it's a noun clause, which post modifies the noun head excuse. And beside the noun clause, we also have a noun phrase in apposition. When we have something in apposition, both of them refer to a particular entity. So you see there, engineer Foucault, the contractor. The contractor here stands in opposition to engineer Foucault as an element that modifies it. And last is non-finite clause. A non-finite clause points. A non-finite clause can also post-modify a noun. For example, they point to emphasize during the debates. The major element, which is the head word here, is points. It's a noun. To emphasize during the debates is a non-finite clause. To infinitive, which post-modifies the noun points. So let's look at the functions of noun phrase. A noun phrase can perform the function. We said earlier that noun phrases perform the function that a noun can perform. We can have the subject, can function as the subject of the verb. For example, the decision of management will favor the staff. The decision of the management will favor the staff. Here, what will favor the staff is the noun phrase, the decision of the management. In that place, that noun phrase functions as the subject. Second is can function as direct objects. For example, I found a blue pen in the drawer. What did I find? A blue pen is the direct object of the verb found. Also, indirect objects. Indirect object is an object that benefits direct objects. Example, I built my mother a house. Asking the question, What did I build? You know, it's a house. That's the direct object. Who benefit the house? My mother. So in this instance, my mother stands as the indirect objects. We also have the subject complements, as you know. The journalist is my partner. The subject complement always complements the subject. We realize that the journalist and my partner is same, they refer to the same personality in the structure. And there is also object complements. We called him our master. Him is the object, but our master modifies the object him to complement it by giving additional information. Also can function as apposition. You know, the apposition is when a particular element stands beside another, in which both of them refer to the same entity. The journalist, my partner, covered the news. My partner here is now phrased in apposition to the journalist. So now phrase can function as apposition. The last example we have there is object of preposition. She sat on the front seat. On the front seat is a prepositional phrase. On will serve as preposition head, while the front seat functions as object of preposition. So beside that, we have a verb phrase. Verb phrase has its own structure and pattern. Is the verb is action word in the structure of the sentence. Likewise, the verb phrase is made up of a lexical verb and one or more auxiliary verbs. So a verb phrase is also called the verbal group, which can have up to 5 elements in its structure. It has auxiliary and also the main verb. For example, we have a premodifier head and head word in its normal structure. As paid, could have paid, might have been paid, might have been being paid. If you look at these elements, you realize that here we have 1 auxiliary and the main verb, 2 auxiliaries, 3 auxiliary, and 4 auxiliary, totaling all the elements in as 5. And we mentioned that the main function of the verb in the structure of sentences to predicate. Likewise, the verb phrase performs the same function in the sentence. So next one is adjectival phrase. Adjectival phrase performs the function performed by an adjective. That is made up of an adjective and a modifier. It has its own structure, which is pre-modifier, head, and post modifier in the structure. And adjectives are mostly pre-modified by some elements, such as intensifying adverb. Example, highly respectable. Highly is an adverb. Respectable is an adjective. Terribly bad. How bad? Terribly bad. Very good. How good? Very. It's also intensifying adverb. Quite interesting. Intensified adverb modifying the adjective. Fairly honest. How honest? Fairly. So we realize that intensified adverbs pre-modifies adjectives in adjectival phrase. Another one thing you need to notice that adjectives can also be post-modified by the following, through use of the following grammatical elements. We can have adverb enough. The adverb enough can post-modify an adjective. For example, big enough. You can say the room is big enough. Big is an adjective, while enough is an adverb. Good enough. Beside that, a prepositional phrase can also perform the function of post-modifying an adjective. For example, happy with you. Happy is the adjective, while with you is a prepositional phrase that post-modify the adjective happy. Afraid of dogs. We say, I am afraid of dogs. Afraid is an adjective. Of dogs is a post-modifier. So the adjective afraid. So beside that, we have a non-finite clause. Non-finite clause can also, sorry, finite clause. Before we talk about non-finite, finite clause is a normal clause. For example, certain that you will come. I can say that we are certain that you will come. Certain here is an adjective. That you will come is a clause. It's a finite clause. Surprised that you could lie. I am surprised that you could lie. That you could lie is a clause. It's a finite clause. Post modifying the adjective surprised. Like we mentioned, we also have a non-finite clause that can post modify an adjective. For example, glad to meet you. To meet you is non-finite to infinitive. Eager to travel. She's eager to travel. Eager is an adjective, while to travel is non-finite clause. So we look at the function performed by adjectival phrase. Number one, it functions as a premodifier in a noun phrase. Premodifier in a noun phrase. For example, a very tall tree. Here we have the adjectival phrase very tall, which premodifies the noun tree. Highly experienced workers. Highly experienced workers. Highly experienced is an adjectival phrase which premodifies the noun edge workers. It can also function as subject complement in the sentence structure. For example, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There's a little break from my end, which has been fixed. So we continue our business. So we'll talk about object complements. She finds the job very interesting. Very interesting complement the object, the job. Because in this sentence, we have she as subject finds the verb, the job, the object. The very interesting here is now giving us additional information on the objects. So the book made me anxious. Another example, me is the object. Why anxious? Anxious to study is adjectival phrase. And anxious to study modifies the noun me, which is the object. It can function as post modifier in a noun phrase. We have some rare occasions in which we have such expression. For example, here, the only nurse available at the hospital. Look at it, available at the hospital is an adjectival phrase. which post modifies the noun ness. It post modifies the noun ness. Another example, the attitude quite terrible. Quite terrible here is an adjectival phrase that post modifies the noun attitude. So next one is adverbial phrase. Like we mentioned, adverbial phrase perform the function meant to be performed by an adverb. And it's made up of an adverb and modifiers. So in the structure of adverbial phrase, we have pre-modifier, head word, and post modifier in the structure. So for example, we have very fast. How fast? Very. Very is an adverb. Wi-Fi is also an adverb. Too often, quickly enough, faster than I could imagine, quite soon indeed. So in this way, we have the head word and post modifier. Here we have pre-modifier soon, quite, head word soon, indeed post modifier. But you need to note that the major function of adverbial phrase is to modify a verb in the structure of sentence. But you get the full detail beyond this level in the video we did on adverbial phrase. Sorry, adverbial phrase online. We have here example. She ran quickly enough to catch the train. Quickly enough modifies the verb ran. He left quite soon indeed. Quite soon indeed modifies the verb left. Just note that adverbial phrase modifies a verb in a simple way. And the last one is a prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase is made up of a preposition and is complement. The complement is crucial in a prepositional phrase. The preposition will serve as the head word in the prepositional phrase, while some item can function as the complement. For example, here we have at last. At is a preposition, while last is the complement. From office. From is a preposition, while office is the complement. In the garage. In the garage. In is the preposition, while the garage is the complement. By the way. By is a preposition, while the way is the complement. And the complements in the prepositional phrase may be any of the following. The first one here is a noun. A noun may function as a complement. For example, at home. At home. Home is a noun and complements the preposition at. To school. School is a noun, complement the preposition to. From Lagos. Lagos is a noun, complement the preposition from. Another one is a pronoun. A pronoun. For example, in you. You is a pronoun which complements the preposition in. From them. Them is a pronoun which complements the preposition from. By herself. Herself is a pronoun which complements the preposition by. And beyond that, we can have a noun phrase functioning as complements in the prepositional phrase. For example, in the car. In is a preposition, which is the head word, while the car is a noun phrase. And that noun phrase performs the function of complementing the preposition in order to form or create a prepositional phrase in the car. By the way. By also is a preposition, while the way is a noun phrase. And this is the way, which is a noun phrase, complement by in order to form a prepositional phrase by the way. Also, an adverb can function as elements in a or complement in a prepositional phrase. Example, at where. Where is adverb, especially adverb of place. And this adverb complements preposition at to create a prepositional phrase at where. From there, there is also another adverb of place, which complements the preposition of from. Beyond that, we also have a noun clause functioning as a complement in a prepositional phrase. Here, we have with what I saw. What I saw is a noun clause. What I saw is a noun clause, which complements with in order to form the prepositional phrase with what I saw. From what you said. From what you said. What you said is a clause, it's a noun clause, which complement from to create for a prepositional phrase from what you said. And beyond that, beside that, we have ing non-finite clause functioning as complement. For example, by reading a novel. By is the preposition. While reading a novel is non-finite clause, ing. After writing the exam, after preposition, writing the exam is also a non-finite clause, complementing after. So, and the last thing is to look at the functions of prepositional phrase. There are three major functions. Number one, it can function as post modifier of a noun in a noun phrase. It can function as post modifier of a noun in a noun phrase. For example, all the students in the class is a prepositional phrase which modifies the noun head students. The soup in the pot is a prepositional phrase which post modifies the noun soup. So we can see a prepositional phrase as a post modifier of a noun in a noun phrase. The second function is that it can function as a post modifier of an adjective in an adjectival phrase. It can post modify an adjective. For example, afraid of your action. Of your action is a prepositional phrase. And that prepositional phrase post modifies the adjective afraid in order to create an adjectival phrase, afraid of your action. Another example, sure of what you said. We can say, are you sure of what you said? So sure of what you said will function as an adjectival phrase where we have of what you said, which is a preposition functioning as a post modifier of the adjective sure. In order to create an adjectival phrase, sure of what you said. And the next is that it can function as adverbia. Adverbia. That is, perform the function that an adverb is supposed to perform. Adverbia refer to any element that can perform the function of an adverb. For example here, she left in the morning. We know that by name, in the morning is a prepositional phrase. But in this case, it's functioning as adverb of time. So we can call it adverbial phrase. Because of the adverbial function it performs. I found the pen in the drawer. In the drawer is a prepositional phrase. But here we call it adverbial because it performs the function showing the adverb of place. It functions as an adverb of place. Therefore, it can be partially called adverbial phrase because of the function it performs, not because of the structure it has. Another one, with due respect, I was at a training on that day. Looking at with due respect, yeah, we call it a disjunct, which is one of the functions of adverb. This is a prepositional phrase with the head word. Due respect, the complement. So, preposition can function as adverbial, post modifier of a noun, and post modifier of an adjective. So that's that about phrase. Any question on phrase so far? And I believe you have read it. You've watched the videos on phrase, but this is just a paraphrase version. Any question? Any question on the phrase?
Yes, I have a
Okay, Sadiq, go ahead.
yes, sir. My question is that you already know that a noun or a phrase is a group of words that which one of its function is that it lacks a finite verb, a noun phrase particularly that it lacks a finite verb. So my question is that when you were talking about the post modifier of a noun, you made mention of an adjectival phrase when you said that the land which was taken. So the land which was taken. So you say which was taken is the adjectival clause functioning as the post modifier of the noun. So my question is that was it is a finite verb and it occurs in a noun phrase. Does that not go against the definition we knew of a phrase before, particularly noun phrases? So that is my questions.
If you remember, when we started the class, the idea of noun phrase should not contain the finite verb. I ask a question, what of verb phrase? Is there no finite verb in verb phrase? You can only talk about there is no agreement between the subject and verb. And the kind of verb usually referred to is finite verb. But what we are talking about a clause, a relative clause. You will not break it down. You see that clause stand on its own as an entity. And what it does is to post modify. Simple. We are not, if you are to analyze that clause, you see that would be a clause especially. And we mentioned that in our video that something is called embedded. And when a clause is being embedded to be part of a noun, it has lost its status of being a complete clause. It has just become a part of a phrase. So that quality you are talking about of containing a subject and a finite verb will not be taken into consideration because it has lost that status by bringing himself in between the structure of a phrase. So you are not supposed to lay emphasis on it as an element that because we have a verb must be, especially a finite verb must be in the structure of a clause. And we have told that clause reduce its status to function as a post modifier. Simple. Don't go into aspect of telling us that in that phrase we have a finite clause. That's not what we're talking about. And that what you see there as reduced its level does not have the status of being treated as a clause inside that phrase. We only need to treat this as just one thing, a post modifier, and not more than that. If you want to account for it, you are going to clause analysis or sentence analysis, which is outside the level of phrase entirely. So that's that about it. Sorry. Any
All
other
right. Thank
question?
you very much, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
Sir, good evening. Please, I want to ask about finite clause and noun clause. Is there any?
What about it?
Yes, sir, they are seeming similar.
What is finite clause? Hmm.
I don't know what the finite clause is.
You are
Like,
supposed to know now. I taught you this several times in class.
yes, I can give example, but I cannot like the definition. It's
A
not coming to
clause that contains a finite verb. It's not more than that.
me, sir.
That is complete clause. Simple. It's a complete clause.
Oh, okay, sir. So, sir, why does it seem similar to a noun clause?
Because a noun clause is also a finite clause.
Oh, okay.
It's a finite clause.
Okay, sir. About the pre-modifier of a verb. You said you mentioned them having it having one auxiliary, two auxiliaries, three auxiliaries, up to five auxiliaries. Those
Up to 4.
auxiliaries up to 4.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Those auxiliaries, they have names like the one that can take the first position and all of that. Please, can you?
Well, we advise to go and watch our video on verb phrase. The work has been done there. It's still there online. Nobody touches it. Please, let's visit those videos. They will, what I've just given you today is just a bridge version. Many things were skipped because of our time. And we can't be what we treated for almost a quarter of a semester. We can't just finish it in a day. So it's available there. You can go and study it.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, my dear. Any other question? So if there's no more question, let's move to the next item. Okay. Damilola. Damilola, I'm waiting for you.
Please, can you hear me, sir?
Hello. I can hear you.
So in this function of prepositional phrase, you said it can function as adverbial, like adverbial, right? You said with due respect.
Hello. Maybe you should leave
training
where you
on
are. Hello, Dami. Leave where you are. Some noises
Yeah.
are filtering into the mic. Leave where you are. You can move to another location there.
Sir, can you hear me now?
Clearly. Excellent.
This function of prepositional phrase said can function as
Some things are already affecting your mic again. Are people making noise or fixing something around you?
No, I'm inside the house. I'm outside.
Well, we can't get your question because there's a lot of noise around you. Perhaps maybe you are in the vehicle. Okay, Mercy.
Okay, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Clearly.
Okay, so I just want to ask how do we know when a noun or a noun phrase is the subject of the verb and when it's the subject of the sentence? Because I think I've seen that you said it during the lectures today.
Okay. Both of them are the same thing. Either you say the subject of the verb, because that's what they want in your WAEC, as they used to say. You said the subject, because a sentence must have its subjects. If they are the same thing, either you call it subject or the subject. But the reason why we usually distinguish at times is when we have complex or compound sentence. And you know, in each of them, there are two phrases, there are two clauses. In a compound sentence, each clause has its own subject and its own verb. But in a complex sentence, the subject of the main clause is the subject of the sentence. And the verb of the main clause is the verb of the sentence. But when we have the compound sentence, there must be two subject and 2 verbs, except whereby the subject refers to the same entity, the same noun, and the verb refers to the same action. So when we either will say the subject of the verb or subject of the sentence, we mean the same thing. But I personally go with the subject of the sentence. So that's that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You are welcome. Damilola, are you in a better place now to ask your question?
Just
Okay, just say it quickly. Hello?
yes, sir. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Better.
It's the last of this version of positional phrase. This video.
The same thing that started. What kind of mic are you using? Are you using earpiece or headphone or pod? If you are using pod, remove the pod and speak directly to your phone mic.
No, I'm not using earpiece.
You are not using earpod or earpiece. And let your mic be close, your phone be closer to your mouth, because something is interjecting it.
Yeah, it's a function of
Hello, maybe you send your question to me. Send it to my WhatsApp, because you can't get you. Something is affecting the mic of your phone. Send your question to me. So let's move to clause. We need to briefly look at clause. So a clause is a unit of grammar above phrase, but below sentence. It's a unit of grammar above phrase, but below sentence. That's one thing you need to understand. Like a phrase is a unit. So we can say that it's a meaningful group of words that have a subject and a verb, functioning as part of a sentence. It's a group of words. The group of words has meaning, and also it functions as part of a sentence. Then why do we call a clause part of a sentence? The issue is that a clause does not have a terminal punctuation mark, such as full stop, exclamation, or question mark. It does not have it. Like in this sentence example now, we have, I will see you when I come back tomorrow. If we are to break it to clauses, I will see you will stand on its own without the terminal punctuation mark. When I come back tomorrow, we stand on its own without terminal punctuation mark. You'll see that this sentence contains 2 clauses. And we may have a sentence that contains more than that. After they finish the work, they were packing their tools when we came in. And here we have 3 clauses. And to account for each of the three clauses you have, after they finish the work, realize that there is nothing to punctuate there. They were packing their tools, nothing ends it. When we came in, nothing ends it. So each of them is not a sentence, is a clause, because what will qualify each of them to be a sentence is not present with them, which is the terminal punctuation mark. So, according to structure, clauses are divided into two. We have main and subordinate clauses. They are divided into two. We have main and subordinate clauses. You know that the main clause is also called independent clause, while subordinate clause is called dependent clause. As we know that main clause can stand on its own and make sense like a simple sentence. But subordinate clause, on the other hand, cannot stand alone. It needs support of the main clause to express a complete meaning. While main clause can still give us a complete meaning, a subordinate clause does not have that capacity to supply complete meaning. For example, we have main clause and subordinate clause. She had typed the document before I left the office. In that sentence, she had typed the document is the main clause. Before I left the office is a subordinate clause. It may not accommodate you because you hurt his feelings. It may not accommodate you is the main clause. Why subordinate clause is because you hurt his feelings. We can still consider you if you decide to join us. We can still consider you, it's a main clause, as a complete. If you decide to join us, it's a subordinate clause. And what you need to notice that subordinate clauses have their own position in the complex sentence. For example, here, they can occur at the initial position, middle, and final position in a sentence. For example, since you cannot do the job, you can go. You observe that this is a subordinate clause, since you cannot do the job. Appears at the initial position of the sentence, while you can go is the main clause, which comes at the final position. A second example, you should let me know when you are ready. You should let me know is the main clause. When you are ready is a subordinate clause. And the last example we have, the house which was put up for auction by the bank has been bought. In that place, the main clause is split in two, which is the house has been bought. It's split in two to accommodate the subordinate clause, which was put up for auction by the bank. Here you realize that subordinate clause can either come at the initial position as in example 1, final position as in example 2, and middle position as in example 3 here. And you need to understand the function. We have the clause according to function. We have a noun clause or nominal clause. We call it noun or nominal clause, adjectival clause, and adverbial clause. All these are subordinate clauses. So let's check each of them. So we said that subordinate clause cannot stand alone in a sentence. They need the help of the main clauses. They perform some function similar to that of part of speech. And there are 5 types of subordinate clause which perform this function. The first 3 are the major ones that we usually emphasize, like noun clause, adjectival clause, and adverbial clause. But the remaining 2 are non-finite clauses. And we have 2 of them. We have non-finite clause and verbless clause. So we go through each of them for you to understand what they are and how they function. Starting with noun clause. A noun clause performs the function of a noun in the sentence. A noun clause performs the function of a noun in the sentence. What you need to notice that as a clause, it has its own subject and predicates. As a clause, it has its own subject and predicates. That's what makes it a clause. But because it performs the function of a noun, is a noun clause. And the noun clause can be introduced by the following words: that's, who, whoever, what, why, how, and whether. All these elements occurs with whatever functions as the subject of the clause. And if you look at the example below, all the italicized expressions in the sentences below are noun phrases. The first example, noun clauses, sorry. We discovered that you have been the cause of our problem. Look at, what did we discover? That you have been the cause of our problem. Look at the element that introduced the clause. That is among the elements that can introduce the noun clause. That you have been the cause of our problem. That's what was discovered. What you can offer is our request. And you also look here, what you can offer. The element that introduces is what. Remember that what goes with a subject. So what function with a subject of that particular clause? What function as the subject of this sentence is a noun clause? What you can offer. Another point is that I want to know how you manage the situation. Looking at it, how is one of the elements that introduces a noun clause. And the noun clause must have its own subject. What do you want to know? How you manage the situation. Look here, last example. I don't have interest in whatever you have to say. Whatever you have to say is a noun clause. And looking at it, the element that introduces it is among, although we don't mention it, but it's still among the elements that can introduce it. Whatever you have to say. But in some cases, we may have a noun clause without any of those elements. Those elements may not be there to introduce the noun clause. Yes, I observed that Adebayo has been trying to raise the hand for a question.
Good afternoon. Good evening, sir. I'm sorry, I don't have any question. I just wanted to say that we have another class right now, sir.
But the class is scheduled for 4 to 6.
All right, sir. All right, sir.
Let's call the class governor. Is Sarah there? Hello? Hello? Sarah? David? Are both of you not in class? Or could it be that they might have left the class for another class? Okay, since you have a class, maybe we should stop here and continue in our next meeting next week. So any question briefly, so that I can allow you to attend another class. So if there's no question, let's call it a day here. So thank you for being part of the class. You can go and attend the other class. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.